Ladies and gentlemen, this is TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and welcome aboard the Eastern Express. Now, when your air defense systems are in ruins and your best friends are sanctioned into oblivion, who are you gonna call? No, not Ghostbusters, though frankly they'd probably do a better job. You call Belarus. Yep, Iran is turning to Alexander Lukashenko, the man who can barely keep the lights on in Minsk by himself, to rebuild its air defense and electronic warfare systems. What could possibly go wrong? Tonight, we're talking about Iran's latest survival strategy, and it's not exactly inspiring confidence. After its bruising conflict with Israel, Tehran is scrambling to restore its gutted air defense and electronic warfare systems. But Iran is under such heavy sanctions that its usual avenues like Russia, China, even its own domestic industry are bottlenecked. So, why are they turning to Belarus? Well, let's take a look at our latest report to find out more.
Iran and Belarus, two of Russia's closest allies, have been busy tightening relations with each other. Increasingly more often, the countries connected to Russia have been holding state visits and embracing one another as allies in what could be seen as a major yet very steady attempt at changing the world order. During the most recent visit of the Iranian president to Belarus, the two countries signed a series of industrial cooperation agreements which set the standards for trade between the two countries. The deals focus on areas such as agriculture and machine manufacturing. Both Tehran and Minsk have been struggling under Western sanctions for years at this point.
Belarus considers the illegal restraining measures introduced against Minsk and Tehran by the collective West economic terrorism. Our republics are successfully resisting this aggressive and hypocritical sanction war.
Belarus is, of course, far more cuddly with Russia than Iran. The shared history and geographical proximity have given Moscow incredible leverage over the country, and many outright consider Belarus to be a satellite of Russia. Iran had been a bit more of a nebulous partner of Russia's until the start of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Since 2022, however, Tehran has become one of Moscow's greatest supporters. The Iranian government even went so far as to supply thousands of Shahed drones for the Russian war effort and sign a comprehensive strategic partnership with Moscow.
And now, let's zone in on the Eastplaining portion of our show. Many of Russia's closest allies find themselves on the infamous so-called most sanctioned list. Iran and Belarus are no exception, and in fact, have been near the top of the leaderboard for several years.
Russia has been at the very top of the world's most sanctioned list for a while now, mostly due to its illegal invasion of Ukraine. Prior to the war, Iran had held the #1 spot and is currently comfortably in second place. The main force behind the sanctions against Iran has been the United States, with a focus on Iranian oil, gas, petrochemicals, and of course its nuclear industry. Another reason why Iran has been this heavily sanctioned is that it has been accused by Western powers of being the world's biggest sponsor of terrorism. Tehran has been accused of funding militant groups such as Hamas and Hezbollah, as well as offering safe havens to various designated terrorist groups. Belarus, on the other hand, is lower on the list, though still in the top 5. Sanctions against Belarus are imposed by both the US and the EU. Europe in particular has a bone to pick with Minsk over its horrific treatment of oppositionists and peaceful protesters, as well as its facilitation of hybrid warfare against its EU neighbours, such as Poland. Belarus has also been a vocal supporter of Russia's war effort against Ukraine, and has often carried out joint drills with Russia.
And now, let's take a look at the issue in greater detail. Last week, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian met with Alexander Lukashenko in Minsk. The official readouts described the meeting as a friendly chat about trade, investment, science, and education. But according to Ukrainian intelligence, the real agenda was crystal clear. Iran wants Belarusian help in rebuilding its shattered defense systems. Now that sounds strange, right? After all, Belarus isn't exactly famous for cutting-edge air defense tech. But here's the thing. Minsk is uniquely positioned. Unlike Russia, which is drowning in sanctions and has to funnel nearly all of its defense production into its own war in Ukraine, Belarus isn't under the same degree of scrutiny. And that makes it an ideal backdoor. A place where Iran can quietly plug back into the networks of spare parts, technical expertise, and maybe even licensed or rebranded Russian systems. It's a kind of geopolitical laundering. Tehran doesn't need Belarus to invent new weapons, it needs Minsk to act as a conduit. Picking up tech from Russia or elsewhere, cleaning it up, passing it along in ways that don't immediately scream illegal arms transfer. And the timing matters. Iran's defense vulnerabilities were badly exposed in its confrontation with Israel earlier this year. Israel's strikes cut deep into radar sites and jamming facilities that Iran had invested in for decades. Now, without these, Tehran is more vulnerable, not just to Israel, but also to any American or Gulf Arab strike package. Losing air defense is like losing your insurance policy against being bombed back to the Stone Age. So, rebuilding isn't optional, it's existential. Belarus, meanwhile, is busy drafting a martial law bill, citing threats to the Russian-Belarusian Union state. Lukashenko, as ever, is in Moscow's shadow, parroting Kremlin narratives about NATO aggression. But he's also trying to play his own game. Hosting Iran, it gives him leverage. It shows Moscow that he can be useful. Iran is also hoping Belarus will help solve its electricity generation problems and shortages of agricultural machinery. Of course, there's a nuclear undertone here as well. Belarus has no independent nuclear weapons program, but Russian tactical nukes are now stationed on its soil. It's not Lukashenko who actually has control over those weapons, Moscow does, but by working with Belarus, Iran is tying itself into a defense ecosystem that is nuclear adjacent. It's another reminder of how sanctions create strange partnerships. Iran doesn't choose Belarus because Lukashenko is competent or trustworthy. It simply has few doors left open. In a world where great powers squeeze smaller ones through sanctions and proxy wars, countries like Iran and Belarus improvise alliances on the fly. They aren't natural partners. They don't even like each other that much. But when your back is against the wall, even Lukashenko starts to look like a useful friend. And now, here to shed more light on the issue is Frenek Vyachorka, advisor to exiled Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya. Hello, sir, and welcome to Eastern Express.
Hello, good to see you.
So today we're examining the fact that Iran is now reaching out to Belarus, of all countries, to help rebuild its air defense as well as electronic warfare system. And, well, my question would be, is there any secret technology within Belarus that nobody knows about? Why Belarus in particular?
Lukashenko sees Iran as the strategic partner in the military cooperation. It started many, many years ago. It was trade of weapons, missile systems, electronic defense, cybersecurity. And for many years, Lukashenko received millions and millions of euros from this collaboration. And right now, after American-Israeli attack on Iran, this collaboration became very sensitive for Lukashenko, but it seems it did not stop. And this visit is very dangerous. It's very concerning because Iran is interested in building more capacity and more production inside Belarus. Right now, Belarus cannot offer any secret weapon for Iran, but it's very effective in ammunition upgrades, in development of electronic system for missiles, for air defense systems. So I think right now they're exploring the opportunities, and it's very dangerous, and we must follow closely what exact contracts will be signed.
Now, Belarus and Iran are both sanctioned by most of the country in the world. Is there also the fact that this alliance comes out of necessity rather than actually having any substantial advantage?
I think both regimes in Iran and Belarus, they hate the West. The West, the European Union, the NATO allies are the main enemies for them. And this is what unites them the most. Both regimes are part of the axis of evil, where we can include also Russia, also North Korea. And they cooperate not only politically, but primarily economically and militarily. Belarus is interested in helping Iran in evading sanctions because sanctions on Iran are quite stronger and much stronger than on Belarus. And we saw some examples when, for example, ammunition or electronics were purchased by Belarus and potentially, reportedly, were delivered to Iran already as Belarusian products. I think they will be talking about cooperating in this sanction evasion more closely right now, because both for Lukashenko and for Iranian regime, this is very painful, economic isolation from the Western countries.
And speaking of the axis of evil, Russia, North Korea, China, why aren't these countries being contacted for their technological know-how when it comes to these air defense system and electronic warfare?
I think there is collaboration, but Belarus is famous since the Soviet time for some military products, military know-hows, and this is what Lukashenko is interested to sell. For example, Belarus was a big provider of military stuff, equipment, and weapons to many countries around the world. Yes, it's not the biggest supplier. It's not even top 10, top 20 military supplier of weapons. But for Iran, Belarusian products can be very useful, especially right now when no many countries want to cooperate with Iran. I assume that China, North Korea, and Russia can be involved too. I think they will keep all these deals in secrets. We will be following the developments after the visit of Iranian president to Minsk, because I remember they were planning to build the factory of drones in Belarus. This project was frozen for some time, but I am afraid it can be renewed very soon.
All right, speaking of factories in Belarus, how much of this current arms ammunition that's going into Iran are being built, R&D inside Belarus, and how much of it is just Russian equipment with a fresh coat of paint?
I don't have numbers, but I think Belarus is selling primarily modernized weapons. Even sometimes they take the Soviet equipment, they modernize, they add this label Belarusian modernization, and they resell these weapons to a rogue regime such as Iran. I don't have numbers in front of me. I think it's quite substantial, but Belarus is not the only supplier for Iran, definitely. But Lukashenko is interested to do much more. Iran has money, Lukashenko has production capacity and the capability, and they want to cooperate more in this production, especially right now when Belarus economy is in stagnation.
Right, so the Belarus, like you mentioned, economy is struggling and now has found itself a buyer in the form of Iran. Can you go a little bit deeper into what sort of supplies that Belarus can give to Iran that can actually help rebuild its systems?
I think they will be working primarily in air defense, but also attacking weapons. I think some elements of missiles can be developed in Belarus. Russia currently is buying a lot of stuff from Belarus. It's electronics, it's optics for tanks, for heavy armored vehicles. I know that Azerbaijan is buying a lot of stuff, for example, for locators like air defense, radio location defense. So I don't know what products in particular, but it's a quite wide range of products. Belarus is not producing much like final products, but it produces a lot of elements. And these factories in Belarus, they were created in the Soviet time, because Belarus was producing a lot of stuff for the Soviet army. And right now they're using these factories for developing equipment for many countries, primarily dictatorships and rogue regimes.
All right, and interesting question. Still trying to figure out whether this alliance is out of necessity. I'd say in a hypothetical world that these countries are not being sanctioned or kind of having a common enemy, do you think that they still would be friends and have the same level of cooperation?
I don't think so. I think, for Belarus, there is no strategic interest to work with Iran as it is right now. For us, European Union is the biggest potential partner, trade for technology, for societal development. And I think if Belarus will be free and democratic without sanctions, without Lukashenko, and without Russia, we will be working as the part of the European community, and probably in the future as the part of the European Union. This collaboration with Iran, with North Korea, with Russia, primarily because Lukashenko is isolated. No one sees him as the president. No one wants to work with him, and he's just looking for partners far away. Now, for example, he's trying to develop partnerships with African countries. With many of them, the trade is only a few dozen millions of dollars, but the visits of ministers of Lukashenko to African countries are so often, it shows that they are interested to find more buyers, to get more money to compensate the losses from sanctions.
How much of it do you think is out of economic consideration, and how much of it is Lukashenko trying to legitimize his regime and perhaps find more friends on an international level?
Oh, indeed. He suffers a lot from isolation, from sanctions. He was very happy that President Trump called him, and the state propaganda sold it as the big victory for Lukashenko and legitimization. But I don't think that European Union leaders are seeing Lukashenko as the independent actor. They see him as the Putin's proxy, not more. For Lukashenko, to get out of isolation is necessity, but it's very difficult. He must do concrete steps to stop repressions, to release political prisoners, to change the political climate, and he's not ready to do that, because if he softens political repression in Belarus, the regime can crumble. Now it's being held only on fear and the terror. And that's why Lukashenko chooses to collaborate with dictatorships and not seeking the dialogue with the democratic West.
All right. Now, circle back to our original topic with the cooperation between Iran and Belarus. Do you think that this cooperation will be able to help Iran kind of accelerate its rebuilding of air defense system and electronic warfare in a substantial enough way that the West should keep an eye out for?
Not for 100%, but a substantial part of equipment, especially air defense systems, can be sold by Lukashenko. It could be Belarusian modernization, it could be weapons resold from other countries. We speak about missiles, we speak about locators, because this radio location system, since Soviet time, it was quite present in Belarus, and Lukashenko has enough equipment to sell. Yes, it's not the most modern. It's I wouldn't say it's like technologically advanced, same as the Western technologies, but for Iran it could be the partial solution as well. I think Iran will be looking right now to rebuild their military capacity, not only in Belarus, but with many countries. I think they will reach out to China, they will reach out to Russia. After this blow by Israel and the United States, any partnership for Iran is important.
Right, so it does seem like they are scrambling to find anyone can help rebuild their system. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on Eastern Express.
Thank you.
Cheers. And now we're moving on to the Eastern News Flash, a series of all the other stories from the East that you don't want to miss. Ukraine intends to secure $1 billion a month in funding from its Western allies. The money is meant to finance the purchase of American-made weapons.
Western and in particular American military aid has played a vital role in Ukraine's efforts to defend itself against the Russian invasion. Ever since the Trump administration took over, however, Washington has been seemingly less eager to support Kyiv militarily as it had been under Joe Biden. This is where NATO's prioritized Ukraine requirements list comes in, with Norway being its latest member. The participating nations can buy US-made weapons through the program. The Ukrainian side also wants to deepen cooperation when it comes to military manufacturing ventures, such as drone production and other investments. After all, Kyiv brings unmatched battlefield experience to the table when it comes to military equipment. Ukraine's request for funding comes as Kyiv is seeking to secure long-term US security guarantees through a major arms deal.
Ukraine has taken the next step when it comes to securing a $50 billion drone deal with the United States. The agreement foresees the manufacturing of a staggering 10 million drones per year.
Drones and drone warfare have become a kind of symbol of the war in Ukraine. This conflict has shown not just the necessity of using drones, but also the versatility of this type of equipment. So it is no surprise that during US Special Envoy for Ukraine and Russia Keith Kellogg's visit to Ukraine, the two sides were able to make inroads when it comes to arms production and joint defense projects involving drones. Ukraine has proposed a joint drone manufacturing program with Washington that will be worth over $50 billion over 5 years. This would be one of the largest defense initiatives of its kind in the world. It would involve not just bulk production, but also developing technologies which would boost Ukraine's defense capabilities.
Kazakhstan is rapidly catching up with Russia when it comes to the economy. The country's GDP per capita is projected to outpace Russia during this year.
According to the latest data from the International Monetary Fund, Kazakhstan's GDP per capita is forecast to hit an all-time high of $14,770 this year, exceeding Russia's $14,260. This means that in this category, Kazakhstan will be the leader among post-Soviet countries other than the Baltics. The data also illustrates Kazakhstan's surging economic growth since the turn of the century, which has been fueled by the country's oil and mineral wealth. The fact that Russia has become embroiled in an economically disastrous war of its own making has also helped Astana achieve this shift. Europe, for example, has replaced much of its Russian oil with Kazakh crude. Nonetheless, these successes have unfortunately been overshadowed by concerns over dropping oil prices, rising government debt, and persistent inflation.
And that's all for this episode of Eastern Express. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.